is rough, and it takes all that you've got, but he's been here, just waiting for you to knock, to take his hand and plant your feet on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock. I want to live my life on the rock.
G'day, mate. You're watching Life on the Rock.
Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock, and tonight our guest is Father Mark Ivany. He gave a fantastic homily back in January at the March for Life for the young people at the Verizon Center, and tonight he'll be speaking about his message to young people. He's associate pastor at his parish in Washington, D.C., Bethesda, Little Flower Parish, and he'll be speaking about his work with young people and the message young people need to hear. So we're looking forward to that. Welcome, Doug. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
And we're joined by Father Miguel this evening. And I asked Father to come on the show because I recently saw the movie The Rite, and we've all seen it. It's a movie starring Anthony Hopkins about the exorcism. And it was a powerful movie. It had some good stuff, had some inaccuracies. I think one would be like a deacon performing exorcisms and things. But still, there's some very striking elements I thought it'd be worth speaking about. For me, one of the things that struck me was just the reality of Satan. You know, oftentimes our culture, we want to dismiss Satan. He doesn't have a real influence or effect. The reality of sin, the reality of hell, the reality of the priesthood. I was actually quite moved in some parts of the movie about the call to the priesthood, that he's there for the salvation of souls. Now, Father, I know you read the book, and can you talk a little bit about the book and the movie?
Yeah, first of all, I think the movie, it's been a while since I watched the movie. It doesn't say based on true story. I think it says something like inspired by true events or something like that. So the movie was done based very loosely on the book. And the book is not a deacon or not a seminarian, but a priest who goes to this class in Rome, and then also he would work with an exorcist as, I guess, an apprentice, mentor, you know. And so, and the, you know, for example, like there's some elements in the movie that I think the director is trying to show, like the different manifestations that might possibly, you know, happen during exorcism, things like that. Let's see, I don't want to give away the the whole movie, but there's like the ending of what happened in the movie toward the main actor or toward the exorcist it's not talked about in the book at all. Right. And the different cases that was in the movie, it's,
well, I'm sorry for that.
You know,
if anything's going to pique people's curiosity now, well, what was it? You say that didn't really happen to him. What was it that didn't really happen? We need to go to the movie and find out. But you're right on that. Yeah. That what happens to the main character, the priest, the main exorcist, didn't really happen. Yeah. So when you watch that, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That'll raise box office sales right there.
I know you hear something about the exorcist will often speak about how the Satan likes to remain hidden. Yeah. Can you talk about that aspect of it?
Yeah, they were, the book was just explaining that one of the things that the exorcists typically try to do is to get the name of the demons that's possessing the person. And oftentimes they don't want to, you know, first they don't want it to manifest themselves, even though they may be possessing a person. They don't want it to make any manifestation to, I guess, to fool the exorcist or whoever that he's not there, you know, kind of, okay, it is just some medical problem or whatever. And then, but then once the demons start manifesting itself, then the exorcists start getting the names and then they don't want to reveal the name right away. They either lie or they just tell maybe half the truth, you know. And because once the name is revealed, then they get weakened in their power. And then a lot of times what the book is said in there is the names of the demons oftentimes is the function of what they do. Like, you know, maybe murder or blasphemer or something like that. You know, this is like what they do. They tempt this people to do that. I think it kind of tied in with confession. You know, I was thinking about that with the exorcism and confession. It's kind of really tied in close, because you know we go to confession. We ourselves confess. You know what sins we committed, and sometimes we get tempted too. We don't want to confess it. You know, our own sins. We kind of beat around the bush.
We don't want to name that demon that may be tempting
us. I mean, just
right.
like, for example, like the church asks us to confess, if it's mortal sins, to confess them by name and by number. Sometimes the name is not really mentioned. You know, just let's say, yeah, okay, I commit the sin of purity. Okay, that could mean a whole lot. You know,
Sure.
It could be adultery, or it could be whatever. You know. So things like that when it comes to mortal
Well,
sins.
Satan works in the dark, and if we expose him to the light of Christ, you know, in confession, it's a powerful message. You know, we need to be like children. We go to confess our sins, and God can work powerfully in our lives. There's another point I'd like to make. Father Miguel sent this around to us here about a statement by Father Gabriel Amorth, the chief exorcist of Rome, and he talked about the power of John Paul II's intercession, and he said, in an exorcism, the demon actually said one reason he feared, why he was scared of John Paul II, was because he pulled so many young people from my hands. You know, there are so many young people who, thanks to John Paul II, were converted. So we need to be invoking Blessed John Paul II and his special power and authority. We know he's most certainly going to be raised to be a great saint in the church. And so I thought those are some powerful things from this movie. And it's not for kids. We should say that. It's not The Rite is not a movie for kids to see. So, well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Father Mark Ivany, Father Mark Ivany from Washington, speaking about his message to young people. So don't go away. We'll be back in a minute. Hi, welcome back to Life on the Rock. Tonight we have Father Mark Ivany. Welcome.
Thanks. Thanks, Bob.
And let's start. I know you caught our attention here at the network with that Mass at the Verizon Center at the March for Life. Can you tell us about that event, how many people, and the purpose of it?
It was a very wonderful event. Obviously, you do it every year. I'm not sure what year they started doing it, the Mass beforehand at the Verizon Center, which is where the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals play. Also, the Georgetown Hoyas play there. So it's a wonderful venue, and it's always an hour and a half or 2 hours before the March for Life. And young people from all over the country, oftentimes with their bishops, come and we celebrate the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass.
And you were preaching.
I was.
What's that like
preaching.
to preach to? Was it 20,000?
It was almost,
Almost
not
20,
quite.
yeah.
It was an amazing experience, and one I'll always be grateful for. It was very encouraging. Just they call it a youth mass and rally. So before the Mass, there's bands and hearing confessions, pray the Rosary. And so as I was kind of in the back preparing, just kind of stuck my head out and just saw these young people, praying the Rosary together. Or before that, it was singing these some praise and worship songs and different things. And it was it was very moving. I was very encouraged to be a priest. It was wonderful.
I think that is one of the great fruits of the march of the World Youth Days is just encouragement.
Right.
You know, I think we spoke about this earlier. It's so easy to fall into discouragement sometimes. You know, everybody's trying to do their work, their part of the garden they're given to till and keep, and it can become tedious. Maybe you haven't seen a lot of fruit, and it can be. But you go to these things, you see young people just kind of inject like a shot of hope, you know, into the mystical body, and the March for Life. It seems predominantly young people, is it? I mean, overall? Or,
yes, in fact, it's so popular now that we actually had to have overflow places. So all the churches in downtown D.C. all have masses at the same time, and also there's the D.C. Armory, which holds a little over 10,000 people. Archbishop Cardinal DiNardo of Houston, Texas, who's the head of the pro-life office at the USCCB, he offered that mass there for 10,000 other young people, and a classmate of mine, Father Pat Riffle, gave a wonderful homily there also.
How did it come to you being the one to preach at this mass? Did you have to pay somebody off?
Yes, right. I think everybody else is busy. I don't know.
Nobody else had time.
No, you have to ask Cardinal Worrell or Father Bill Byrne, or the head of the youth office at the Archdiocese. I'm not sure.
Did you just get a phone call, a letter, an email,
did.
a text message?
Yeah, Father Billy Byrne, who works, who's actually the pastor of my home parish, but also runs the youth ministry amongst other things for the Archdiocese, just called me and said, "What do you think?" And I was pumped. I didn't ask why they asked me. I just, I was very excited. I didn't.
What time do I need to be there?
Exactly.
You didn't ask what you needed to wear, did you?
Yeah, exactly. I figured they'd take care of that.
Right.
I'll bring my album.
Well, what was your core message that day? What were you trying to tell the young people?
Well, that, it was hours and hours and hours of prayer and talking to people who had given the homily before. And what I really felt called to preach about was what it means to be a human person. And one of the things that strongly inspired me was the documentary, The Human Project, done by the Grassroots Film Company.
Yeah.
The same gentleman who did.
It was the Human Experience.
Human Experience.
Right.
The Human Experience.
Yeah, they were on the show talking about that. We saw
Yes.
clips of that. Yeah.
Fantastic group of guys. They also did Fishers of Men, and that's how I got to know them. I somehow stumbled my way into that. And so I was waiting for this Human Experience to come out, and I watched it, and it was just amazing. And it got to the root of the human person. And as I tried to use two stories, a story about a seal and a story about a goose, Bruce the goose, to convey, what it means to be who and what we are created to be, and that is based on the image and likeness of Christ, and not any of these other types of things that people are trying to sell us.
You want to ask it? I know.
Well, you know what I'm thinking? You mentioned seal. And I don't know about anybody else. Is anybody thinking of something else right now?
Yeah.
He's mentioning SEAL, and I'm thinking of Bin Laden for some reason right now. I'm thinking of a Navy SEAL and a goose. I don't understand.
Ask him about Bruce the goose.
That's okay. You're talking animals, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Explain this, Bruce the goose.
Well, this is a true story, and a good friend of mine. We used to work together before I was in the seminary. He's from South Carolina, and he grew up most of his life on a farm in South Carolina. And they have a pond on their farm that Canadian geese often came and hatched their goslings. And apparently one gosling was separated from his mother, and he waddled over to the house, the farm.
We need to cue the music right now, please.
Exactly. Do we have goose music here?
Yeah.
And
gosling separated.
And there was no one, there's no other geese around, so he ended up hanging out with the basset hound, Prunella. And he, over time, he did everything with Prunella. He ate out of the dog bowl, and he slept in the doghouse. And
someone named their dog Prunella?
Yes. That's not the point of the story.
And if you run with the dogs, you start to bark, right?
Exactly. And that's what would happen. In fact, when a car or truck would come down the drive, Prunella would get excited, run out, start barking, and Bruce would start flapping his wings and start quacking. And this is, great fun. Everybody thinks it's funny to think that a goose would think it's a dog. But, what I said was it's also kind of sad, because geese are created to fly and to swim and do these other things. And Bruce never learned how to do that. And my point was that sometimes we are a lot like Bruce when we lose Christ.
Right.
We lose what we are created to be.
This is a true story.
This is a true story.
Yeah. Is anybody working with Bruce today, or is
My mother has been telling me that she's going to do a children's book about Bruce the Goose. So.
Yeah.
So
But
we'll
you're
see if she
thinking,
does.
you're
But
thinking
the real Bruce, yeah, to bring in
sort of therapy with the
this
goose.
happened back in the '80s, so I don't think Bruce is
Probably
with
not
us
around.
anymore. Yeah,
But you're right. That
It's
is
been a meal by now.
that is
when you can't fly and you're a goose,
You're going to get eaten.
you're right.
that is a tragedy when it comes to the human person. And our culture can be so deforming that people get mixed messages or evil messages, even wrong messages. Could we talk about that? What are some of the principal message a young person needs to hear today that maybe they're not getting from the culture and they need to hear it?
Well, I think in our consumerist society, we sometimes are told that we are what we possess or what we wear or what people think of us. These, of course, is not what the gospel teaches us.
Right.
That we are beloved sons and daughters of Jesus Christ,
Right.
and that changes everything.
Right.
That gives us great dignity, but it also gives us great power, great abilities to do amazing things, to experience amazing things, to know Christ in ways that animals and other created things cannot.
And what about in the pro-life movement? Because you tied all this into the pro-life movement.
Yes, so the beginning story about the seal, the animal seal, was was used to show how the human person is instinctively pro-life. We're instinctively drawn to save life. And I won't tell the whole story now, but a seal had gotten sick or hurt by a boat, and the seal was pregnant, and then these scientists were there, and this is another true story. It was on National Geographic or something, and they did all these procedures in operation to save these baby seals because the mother was dying and there's nothing they could do, and they did it, and they saved however many of these seal pups, and they were all ecstatic, and they realized that they had done the right thing. It was just common sense. They were just instinctively drawn to save life. There was no politics involved, and that's how I believe we were created to view the human person more so than animals.
And you have a great comparison in the talk where you talk about other civil rights movement, because this is a civil rights,
Right.
This is human rights, human dignity, and other movements like the women's rights or African American rights that they could speak for themselves.
Right.
But here, it's different.
Yeah, and ultimately, that's I believe the greatest difference between these other civil rights movements that have gone before us and this one is that the people who are most directly affected by Roe versus Wade are not here to march on Washington. They're not here to give speeches. They're not able to make signs,
Right.
As were the other people who have been discriminated against in the past. And so that's why it's so important for us as Christians, as Catholics, to be that voice, to carry those signs and to be at those marches, to stand up.
And that day in the Verizon Center, you were telling young people, right? Young people, they're not too young
Not
to
too
go
young.
out and carry this message or to give voice?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think, in fact, oftentimes it's the young face, the voice is far more powerful than someone older.
I know Father Pavone talks about how young people think like in a linear fashion, that an injustice is being done here. Let's go speak out to this injustice. Oftentimes we talk ourselves out of things. right?
Overanalyze it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we create committees and subcommittees, and we have votes, and we figure out whether or not we have it in our budget, right? I mean, we do, honestly, and that's the stuff that can slow us down from getting this type of work done. Whereas young people are, well, let's throw everybody in a bus and drive over there and stand in front of that building
And do it.
and let them know we're not going to take it. And there's something powerful about that kind of fresh blood that needs to be there.
And there's something very contagious about that also, I believe.
It's a John the Baptist type of spirit, kind of crazy, wild look in the eye that's almost has a you're kind of almost uneasy in a good way with this person, because you know they don't remain quiet. Yeah,
right?
something different. They won't
about
remain
that.
silent in the face of injustice. It's like Jesus flipping over tables and driving out animals with a whip.
Yeah.
And there was a goose there too, I think.
The goose of the temple, yeah.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Father Mark Ivany and his message, so don't go away. We'll be back in a minute.
Old people. How old are you, Father?
Hi, welcome back to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guest is Father Mark Ivany.
Same name as yourself.
One of the lines of scripture that day when you were preaching was that you will do greater works than these. Christ was referring to the works he's done. He's telling his disciples, you believers, you baptized, you guys are going to go out there and do greater works than these. Can you talk about that element?
That was actually a real fun part of, I think, of that gospel, and of what turned into the homily, was this trying to convince people of not to lower the bar on God. I think one of the problems we have in our society, I know in my own spiritual life, I work on this, is to not lower the bar on God and our expectations with regards to what He can do through us, what we can do when He's living in us. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes we think of the miracles that Christ performed as something he did or was able to do solely because He was God and man. But as the gospel tells us that you will do greater things than these. For those of us who believe in the Father and in Christ, and we see from the scriptures, St. Peter raising a young girl from the dead, and we see St. Scholastica as the other example that I used, who wanted to spend a night in prayer with her brother St. Benedict, and she prayed that the weather would turn bad, and it did, and he was forced to stay with her, and there's just hundreds of thousands of other miracles that God has performed through people. And I think that we should be that shouldn't be so rare.
Right.
We should be more used to miracles and things happening through us.
And shouldn't we be more confident in that as well? Mm-hmm. I mean, when we pray with the confidence that God can, has, and wants to work through us.
Yeah, I agree. I think that. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, just that kind of an attitude. Right. Pray with that fervor, but not that kind of maybe not. But I mean, He's done this countless times over the centuries.
And he desires to do it to each one of us every day.
But He needs hearts that are willing to trust and be open to that. Yeah.
And I know in my own life, is the constant struggle to believe more, and to believe that Jesus Christ truly desires to love us in this way, to work through us. I think we're scared of being disappointed, and I think especially young people, we don't want to be embarrassed. At school, you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to stand out too much. We don't want to be disappointed. A very good friend of mine recently just went on a 3-day retreat, and I talked to her before she left, and I noticed a little hesitation in her voice, and I said, what's the problem? You're scared of something? She goes, well, I'm just a little scared that nothing's going to happen. And that, I think that's true for me sometimes. I'm just afraid God's not going to do something if I open myself up. Right. But we know that God is just full of surprises, and that He desires to do this. He desires to act in our heart, desires to change everything.
Yeah, and I know when we were speaking earlier this afternoon, it struck me, it made me think about the gospel and how often Jesus does praise faith or a lack of faith. Your faith has saved you or healed you. And so there is that part that faith is a gift given to us by baptism, but it's also, the Catechism describes it as a human act. there's a part of me that engages, that gives, that trusts, that steps out, an act of the will. And I know we were talking about this. I know I felt it too in my own life, that I feel like sometimes God's really challenging me to come out, and risk something, or really trust Him. Especially I think when it comes to our own growth. I mean, God always wants us to grow in holiness. And when we're battling certain things in our life, to bring that confidence to it. Say, Lord, I know. In fact, some of the saints said that. Pray as if God already answered it.
Right.
With that kind of confidence.
And isn't it true that much of the work that we do, in imitation of the cross on Calvary, can look like a failure?
That's a good point.
I love the fact that we worry about the scandals that go on in the church, and the greatest scandal really would have been Calvary. I mean, if you'd had MSNBC or CNN or any of these other organizations back, you can just see them standing there at the bottom of Calvary with a microphone and the camera and the 3 crosses in the background, and they're saying, well, as far as we can tell, of the 12, only one is here, and he's hiding behind the skirt of a woman. And Peter denied that he knew him, and Judas is, well, he's hanging around here somewhere. And, but I mean, the idea that it looked like a complete and utter failure. Right. He'd raised the dead, he'd healed, he'd fed thousands, and here he was nailed to a cross and couldn't do anything about it, apparently. And yet from this the redemption of mankind takes place. So aren't there going to be times when much of our work is going to look the same way?
I think we'd be disappointed if everything was just so methodical, that you do this and then I mean,
you always knew what the outcome was going to be, and it was always going to be progress.
Exactly.
And look
no one would go to movies. No one would,
Sure.
I think deep down that we want an adventure. We want an adventure. We want to kind of step out into the unknown. I've noticed that with young people, that they're looking to be challenged, looking to say, you know what, things look like they've really gone bad here, but the gospel tells us that we can make something beautiful out of this.
Right.
Let's give it a shot.
I was recently reading too from Vatican II, some of the documents there, and there's one on the priesthood, and it talks about the sanctification of the priesthood through the work and through the sacrifice, which is true for any vocation, but it struck me, because I'm a priest, but hearing that it's through those efforts. Right. And like you said, sometimes the efforts will seem to be in failure or in vain, but that's a path to holiness, that God will always somehow maybe draw fruit in my own soul, or maybe other people. Let's talk about your own story. Did you come out of the womb a priest, or what happened there?
Or did you think you were a goose?
That's right. My mother can attest that I did not. I did not. I had a wonderful upbringing in a wonderful Catholic home. I have 3 siblings and great parents. But I think a lot of young people, when I went to college, I just drifted into lukewarmness. I never left the church, never stopped praying, and never completely stopped going to Mass. But it just didn't seem that important. And but my life wasn't horrible. I didn't end up in the gutter, and I didn't, end up in jail or anything. So I think that's why I was kind of able to drift there for so long, where sometimes you see people hit rock bottom and they have a real deep conversion, and they come back. For me, it was a priest stepped up and really challenged me to kind of move out of that lukewarmness and give Christianity a shot. Take Christ at His word and see if it's better. And you
drew a parallel to you were an All-American lacrosse player in college.
Yes.
And you drew an interesting parallel to that. Could you speak on that?
Well, I just remember my senior year of high school, and it was towards the end of the year, and anybody who wanted to play sports in college, you had to fill out the NCAA clearing form, and all the starters and the stars at our school got them. They were filling them out, and I was the last guy in the second string line of midfield in lacrosse, and did not get recruited from anybody, but I took one. I took a form, and something inside of just loved lacrosse, and I wanted to play. I just thought I could do it.
But you played 2 years in high school, but you weren't that great in it.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't. But something inside just to give it a shot. And I remember telling this kid I was eating lunch with, and he asked me, "Why do you have one of those forms?" I said, "I'm going to fill it out." He goes, "Well, what sport are you going to try to play in college?" I said, "Lacrosse." And he laughed, you know, and it wasn't because he was a bad guy or, you know, is a friend, but he just found it funny that I was going to try to play lacrosse. And so I got up to Merrimack as a Division II school in Massachusetts, and I showed up for practice, for tryouts, and I just worked very hard and wiggled my way onto the team, and they never got rid of me.
And at the end, you were.
The end, yeah, things just, really worked out. It was it was a growing program.
Yeah.
So the program wasn't the top tier when I got there. Thanks be to God, by my senior year, we were doing well. We won the ECAC championship, and we're ranked nationally. It was a lot of fun, but it just goes to show that there's things inside, you know, that sometimes drive you to desires.
Right.
For things that it's hard for to imagine, but you got to trust. You got to have faith. And I did a 30-day Ignatian retreat, right before priestly ordination, and the Lord really used that analogy, that story, my lacrosse story, to show me how He's been working and to remind me that was me. That was a desire that I gave you, and what I learned through stepping out into the dark, of trusting something that I couldn't see. It didn't make any sense for me to try out for lacrosse. But the confidence, the knowledge, the leadership skills that I gained as a captain have been of great value in my life and my ministry, and just grateful for the grace.
And I like that aspect of the faith. I mean, sometimes we can get passive, and I think Catholics especially, because we have so many treasures. You know, we have all these sacraments that are just pouring upon grace upon us, and we can get complacent and maybe lose sight of the element of human cooperation.
Right.
You know, I think Mother Angelica is such a great witness of that. You know, she took Malox. You know, faith was 1 foot up in the air, 1 foot on the ground with that queasy feeling in your stomach, she would say. You know, there was some human contribution to this. There was stepping out, and it was scary. It was a real fear, you know, and starting the network and things.
A question: whatever happened to the friend who laughed at you?
He went on, and he was a Division I recruit in soccer, and he did very well. He didn't play all 4 years of college, but he's a good guy.
To you for laughing?
He probably never remembered he did it. It wasn't out of malice. But I should call him up and see. maybe he'll see this.
You notice what happened there, pal?
Yes.
I think you owe me dinner or something, you know?
But this theme comes up in your priesthood as well, because we heard it a couple weeks ago. Sister Miriam James was on the show, and she talked about how in her own life, her faith life, how a priest came in, challenged her, was a friend to her, and made all the difference. You try to challenge. You're an associate pastor. Right. You're in charge of the youth program at your church. You try to challenge the young people, don't you?
I do, primarily because it was so instrumental in my life. I come to know Christ so deeply, and but I found that before you do that, before you make that challenge, they have to trust you. They have to know that you love them, and that you care about them, and you're not looking to just check off some sort of another box. Right. Or I can report back to the pastor. Oh, I
challenge the young people today.
You know, it's
what's next? What's the next box?
Grab lunch here, but so I work very hard, and at least I try to make it to a lot of my kids' sports games, or I've been to talent shows and different things that they're in. Not just because I have to. I don't, in fact, but. Like they're my kids. They call me father, and so I want to be there, and
right. And you issue a specific challenge, right, for some going away to college?
And do the ones that I get to know, more closely. I do challenge them in 3 specific areas. The one that I don't ask them to promise me. I ask them to promise themselves 3 things really. One is to be faithful to Sunday Mass, to not let a Sunday go by, or a holy day of obligation to miss Mass. Second is to pray every single day, even especially during exams, or when tempted, or especially at those moments, even if it's not a long period of time. And then also is to be chaste, to promise themselves they're not going to have sex before they're married.
Right.
And I put it out there, and hopefully They've heard enough kind of homilies or talks, or we've had enough conversations on those three areas that I'm not coming out of the blue. And
Right.
these are things that most of these kids are already doing. Just trying to shore them up.
Yeah. And Doug, I think that kind of goes with what you were saying earlier too about the need to train young people to really be guidance. It's not just that they bring a raw gift to the church that we just.
Well, you know what you're talking about, especially maybe thinking, we mentioned at the break, the Verizon Center, and 20,000 primarily young people there, and you think about that quote that the youth are the future of the church. I think we need to add something to that quote. I'm officially stating it right now on Life on the Rock and EWTN. The youth are the future of the church, but the future is only as good as it is trained to be. In any case, the military, government officials, employees at a business, you don't train them well, they're not going to carry it on well. And that's where I think the energy and the zeal and the excitement and that blood that's in the young needs to have those who are older, who have been around, train, form, shape, raise the bar, challenge. Chip away, sand down the edges, help them grow, and constantly keep holding that. I always say that ring 6 inches out, a little bit further. Obstacle course I have it down in the basement at Camp Gargano back in Nebraska, and we have one of the areas is a platform. It's 2 feet off the ground. The padding that you fall onto, 2 feet to padding, but there's a ring there that hangs there, and it's just far enough out that for some guys it's a 6-inch jump, but they know that if they miss it, they'll fall 2 feet to the padding. Now, it doesn't seem that serious, but for some people, that 6 inches is hard. And as soon as they make it, we pull the platform back a little further for another 6 inches. You just keep it going until pretty soon they're jumping 2 and 3 feet out to grab that ring. And it's that leap of faith off of that platform, that constantly pushing them and challenging them to. And then you see some of these guys who can just fly right through that obstacle course because we've constantly raised the bar in that challenge. And they're formed in shape to take on that. With that energy, they can accomplish the goals. That's how I see what you're doing here.
Well, that's a great point. We talked earlier a little bit about how sometimes, especially with regards to spiritual life, prayer life, that it almost stops at, oftentimes I'll ask a high school kid, what's your prayer life like? And they'll say, well, I say my prayers before I go to bed. I say, well, who taught you how to do that? And they say, well, my parents, and I was like, when? Well, when I was a little kid. And that's great that that's been so ingrained in them that they continue to do it. But I mean, you don't stop with what you learn in first grade to second grade, intellectually. You go on to middle school and high school and maybe to college and beyond. And I think we need to continue to do the same thing. Sometimes we get very complacent and we get stuck in our spiritual life. And what we teach our kids in the very earliest days is as far as they progress. And we see that is not healthy. We need to continue to challenge, to teach, and
yeah, any good coach does that for a team.
Right.
That's how you make a good athlete.
Exactly.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be back with Father Mark Ivany, so don't go away. We'll be back in a minute. Hi, welcome back to Life on the Rock. Tonight we have Father Mark Ivany speaking about his work with young people. And, we heard about Bruce the Goose and you make the point. The point is that we can lose sight of Christ. And if we lose sight of Christ, He reveals us how we're supposed to live, how we're supposed to love, the virtues we're supposed to have. That's the roadmap. And you challenge your young people in these different areas. One of the areas is chastity. They're going off to school. Could you talk about that message, especially dating? I mean, it is a time in their life. They're supposed to, if they're discerning calls to married life and it's time to date, talk about what your advice is.
Sure. Oftentimes people will say, we got to teach our teens and high school kids, college kids how to date properly. And unfortunately, though, sometimes if you look at it, what oftentimes people are doing in college is not even dating. This notion of hooking up or these other things that are that we're not even getting them to dating yet.
The idea of courtship isn't even
or it's
comprehended.
been lost.
Right.
And so I think that's realize kind of where we are in this battle, and then to begin to show, why is it so important to date, to court? What is the purpose of dating?
Right.
And is obviously we want kids to have fun and to go out and to do things and be around people who they enjoy, but oftentimes you talk to somebody and they're saying, well, Father, I'm not going to marry him. I know they're not the right person, but we have fun. And I kind of feel like a bad guy sometimes to say, what's the point then? Why don't you date someone who at least has the same values and morals, and that you'd be open to continuing a relationship with? It's going to be healthier in that respect.
Can you speak about, and I've heard this so often, in the confessional, about the effect of purity on a relationship? What does that bring to it? How does that help the dating relationship?
Well, I think the way that I've attempted to approach it, and these aren't things that I've kind of made up myself, but in DC we're blessed to have a lot of great young priests and a lot of good lay people who work with young adults. And when my pastor told me on my first day on the job that you're the youth minister, I didn't try to reinvent the wheel, and I went around and I talked to a lot of people who know what they're doing and took good notes. And I found, and as I've been told, that one of the most effective ways is to showing the positive side of purity, not to diminish or water down the fact of sin and the need to stay away from sin and to be forgiven of sin, but the great benefit that comes with being pure. That's how Christ lived, and that's been very helpful. Going a step further, one of the things that we do in our youth group is peer witness talks. And I got the notion from my pastor, who does it at an adult level at the parish. And so I ask every year 3 or 4 kids to individually at different times throughout the year to share an experience of Christ, a particular problem they're having, maybe at school or somewhere. And it's been wonderful. And one of the first young men that we had spoke about dating the right way, and about purity. And he didn't say necessarily anything different than I had said, but coming from a smart, popular kid who was in a dating relationship, coming from a peer, it really hit home. And I was kind of looking around at the other faces of the kids, and you could tell they were listening. You could tell they were believing what he said. And
you speak about too just how you can come to know the other person in a deeper way if it's a pure relationship. It's meant to be pure at this stage. You're not married yet. You're supposed to be pure in marriage as well, but pure according to be a single person. Can you talk about that? How that the impure stuff can overpower. It's such a powerful emotion experience. It can push out the other stuff, the other areas you're supposed to be growing in.
I think it's oftentimes like when you meet somebody for the first time, you introduce yourself and you tell them who you are and where you're from, and you don't all of a sudden jump into deep theological conversations or things. And so much in the same way, if that's how we conducted ourselves in a physical way, it prevents the things that are supposed to come first.
Right.
And so it really stymies someone's development as an individual, but also as a couple, because we know that the great gift of our sexuality, has these powerful benefits of raising and procreation of children and all these things, but also for the couple, the unitive bond that St. Augustine wrote about, is so great, but it's but taken out of its position and out of context, it really harms the individuals. Can
you talk about how this message resonates with young people?
Well, again, I think it depends on how it's delivered, and I'm certainly not proposing that I've got it figured out and I'm doing it the best way possible. But again, showing the positive aspects of doing things the right way. a lot of the theology of the body. And
you mentioned to me that how, especially young women, seem to
yeah,
really get this sometimes quicker than the guy.
sure. I noticed that in our diocese, part of the every priest, we're ingrained into us that we are vocation promoters, and so a lot of the newly ordained, we're each given a high school or a middle school or something that we visit every year, and we give a talk. And part of my talk to the high school that I go to, St. John's, is this aspect of purity and chastity. And I noticed that when I share a story of how I was challenged by this priest mentioned earlier to date the right way. And I was dating this girl, and she's a wonderful girl, but not Catholic and not particularly religious. And as the relationship progressed, by the world's clock, it was time to start doing these things, And
we get it.
Right. So thanks. And so, I said to myself that, this is crazy. I'm going to say that, hey, we're not going to do these things, and she's going to break up with me. It was a beautiful girl. And so I remember talking to the priest about it, and, it was my decision. And I decided, all right, I'm going to try it. I'm going to take the gospel at its word. I'm going to, trust this priest. And as I tell the story, I went to the girl and I said, we're not ever going to have sex unless we were to get married, and none of this other stuff in between. And I was fully expecting that she would, tell me I'm crazy. And I asked all the young girls, what do you think happened? What do you think she said? And there's always one girl or two that will raise their hand and get calm, and they'll say something along the lines that she respected you more, or she fell in love with you, or in a sense, that's exactly what happened. And it was a great gift, a grace that, that the Lord gave me to kind of go through this experience before I went to the seminary, to understand a truth, and not just being taught, not just being told, not reading in a book, but God saying, look, this is the truth. This is how I created you. You tried it, and it worked. And this girl saw something in you that was different. She saw that you wanted to get to know her on all the different levels, intellectually, spiritually, physically, not physically right away. Right. And that spoke to something deep inside of her. That's what I think young women are really looking for.
Right. We're made for real love, right? The Christian vision. Can you talk about the peer witness? You mentioned to me about a recent talk that was given about standing up for your faith. Mm-hmm. So this is a young person in your parish gives a talk about her faith experience.
Right.
And what did she say?
Well, she was speaking about some of the challenges that she encounters, being in public school, being a practicing Catholic, specifically with regards to our understanding of evolution, our understanding of God being the creator, and also abortion. These topics come up, and what was so powerful was that she didn't get up and throw Bibles at anybody or yell and scream, but she would raise her hand in class and she would speak. She would not let other kids just say things and have them go unchecked. And as the conversation went on, as her witness talk went on, what became evident was what was the root of her ability to do this. It was not something that I told her, not something that her parents even told her that she read, but it all stemmed primarily from an encounter or a relationship that she has personally with Christ, and that developed in a real way at a retreat that we went on as a youth group, Mount 2000 and beyond, at your alma mater, Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, Maryland. We took a group to, and while she was there, she had an encounter with Christ. She had a meeting with Christ that she had not experienced before, and that was something tangible in her life, and it compelled her to move. She acted, as you were saying earlier. She was not complacent. She cooperated.
I think that is so typical that you have this experience of Christ, and you feel this need to do something, right? To go on mission, right? And that encounter, that relationship is primary. We have to have that experience in order to give something. We have to have something to give it away, and so I think that's a great story. I think, you know, at Mount 2000, it has long periods of adoration. It's just central to the weekend. It's a weekend for young people. And you've brought that to your parish as well, right? You have the young people in adoration?
We do. I noticed that at our parish in general, we don't have as great of crowds as some parishes do at our adoration. We have adoration at our parish. And there's some, you know, very devoted people who are always there, and that's great. But I noticed that we weren't having a lot of young people, and so I talked to the pastor, and he was very supportive, and bought a medium-sized monstrance that to use, and we started basically every month. We just start with a half an hour of silence, no music, you know, and it's really resonated with the kids.
Yeah, just to take time out, you know, from busy schedules, the noise,
Right.
and come sit before the Lord, and He speaks to us in that silence.
That's one of the, as you said, the silence, and that's really resonated with the kids. They all have the iPhones and cell phones, or iPods, iPads, computers,
And just
radios,
busy schedules.
and just busy schedule.
Yeah.
High school kids are,
Yeah.
you know, are busy, especially when they're playing sports or instruments or in drama. You know, they're taking SAT prep classes and all these things, and they desire silence. And
So adoration just isn't for priests and monks and nuns. It's for young people. It's for everyone. Jesus wants to meet us there. Well, thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you
for
for having
being
me.
with us this
It's
evening.
great.
Thanks, Father. Thanks.
The Lord be. If you could, we could give a blessing together.
Great.
The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
May our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you and give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week.